What's up everybody and welcome back. Today I'm here to talk to you about a handful of things actually, one of which being that GGD have released their very own Studio Cab IRs. I've actually made some presets for these and you can find these in the artist drop down once you purchase and install the plugin. Of course, you'll see my name on there with some tones that I have concocted with their IRs. In addition to that, I figured I would take this as an opportunity to more or less walk through my entire process of recreating this little piece of this Archspire song. And you might be asking, why did I do such a thing? And the answer is that there's legitimately no reason. I just felt like doing it, and I regret forcing myself to learn that solo. It was very difficult, but hopefully I'm better now because of it. Anyway, that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is, like I said, to walk you through my process here. So, for example, how I went about programming the drums, what drum libraries I used, how I went about stacking certain libraries and using combinations of some. Same goes for the bass. I'll give you a little bit of a deeper dive into the signal chain as far as what's happening before and after those cab IRs that I talked about before to show you how I got the exact tones that I did. And yeah, you can also hear my poorly tracked leads in isolation. So anyway, let's jump right into it. Let's get started. Taking a look here in Studio One, we might as well just start with the drums. Why not? Okay, so you'll notice I have this drum MIDI channel muted, and honestly, that's just for the sake of playback. I went ahead and printed down my drum bus. That's simply because once you start stacking all these plugins in a session, the MIDI triggering becomes somewhat unreliable and misfires and just sounds like you have a drunk drummer that also still hits really hard. I'll solo these drums so we have less instances of that happening at least. And let's take a look at, first of all, like I said, how I went about programming the drums. All right, so I got my piano roll open, and as you can see, there are a lot of kick and snare hits. This song utilizes quite a bit of grav blasts. You can see that I did a lot of duplicating of measures here. I'll just play this back for you so you can hear how it sounds. Alright, we already got a little bit of errors in there, but that's okay. That's okay. My computer's doing a lot right now. We'll give it a pass. Okay, so you can hear kick, snare, 16th notes, straight 16th notes. However, to make it a little bit more realistic, I went ahead and adjusted the velocities of the snare. Not so much the kick, because he uses a trigger anyway, and those kicks are fake as hell for lack. Not that that's a bad thing. That's not a criticism by any means. This type of music requires triggers. So I left the velocities pretty even. No, I left them entirely even for the kicks. And for the snares, you can see I did adjust the velocities lazily, but I did do it, so I get points there. By lazily, I mean you can see that I just duplicated every beat. In terms of the velocities, the first one being the strongest, and then of course the subsequent 16th notes within that beat are more varied but lower in dynamics. So again, this is how it sounds. You can hear it's really emphasizing the downbeats there. As far as the kick and the snare go, they're super straightforward. Again, it's just grav blasts, so 16th notes all the way through. There is quite a bit of intricate cymbal work here, and I think that is a pretty notable characteristic of Archspire's drummers playing. So that was the most tedious thing as far as the drum programming goes, which is just listening very closely to the overheads in the overall mix. So this is by no means am I asserting these are all 100% correct. This is an approximation of what he's doing as far as the cymbals are going. So here we go. Okay, so he uses a lot of cymbals. This dovetails nicely into one of the things that I wanted to talk about with you guys, which is the exact kit that I'm using here. And I'm using GGD's P5 kit. So this is Halpern's signature P5 kit. I will bring it down to this monitor so you can see it. And as you can see, there are not that many symbols on this kit. So I went ahead and grabbed some symbols from the Invasion kit, which I'll show you how I did in just a sec. And some of you might already know how to do this, but I figured it was a useful enough tip for those of you who don't know yet about drum libraries and how to integrate multiple ones into the same piano roll and MIDI track. So here's the P5 kit. Sounds great. I'm doing a bunch of stuff to it in post, which I will show you here in a sec. But out of the box, these drum tones are quite phenomenal, as we all know at this point. Drum VSTs and libraries have really come a very long way. So as I alluded to earlier, we really don't need that many pieces of the kit as far as shells go. However, we do need quite a few effect symbols along with, you know, a decent selection of crashes and rides. So here we have your basics, but we got a splash, we got a really nice ride. However, I wanted a stack and another splash and probably a couple other things. Oh, another ride bell, that's right. Just for fun, just for some extra ride action. So literally all I had to do was click and drag this Invasion kit down here to the bottom of this window, and in here it will populate the Invasion kit in its entirety, and then all I had to do was go to, for example, because I was just mentioning the effects symbols, I just had to go ahead and route them to the overheads. So if I hit this guy, you'll see it's going through my overheads and rooms. Same for that guy, same for that guy, same for that guy, and you get the idea. And if I go up here just to prove my point even further, even though you get what I'm saying, I'm sure. There you go. You can see it's going all to the same output, all to the same channel of my outputs. And then that is going into Studio One, where I'm processing it even further. You can see that once I'm playing this, overheads, rooms, all the symbols are going through there. And then into my drum bus. That's routing for you. Okay, was that fun? No? Okay. Oh, actually, before we move on, I should say that I used the exact same principles and methods to add an additional snare to the kit, which is literally just doubling the P5 snare. I just went ahead and I selected this, what was it? Yamaha Recording Custom Brass. I think it's nice and ringy, which I like. I'm becoming more accustomed and partial to ringy snares. Even though in this context, you don't really want a ringy snare because there's not enough time to appreciate the ring and the overtones of the ring, because you're just hitting 16th notes constantly, but that's okay. I just figured I'd use it anyway. I thought that the blend of the two sounded nice because the body of the P5 snare was countered nicely by the attack and the punch of this Yamaha snare from the Invasion kit. Why don't I solo that for you? Yeah, you can hopefully hear that they sort of complete one another, in my opinion. I'm sure it's not the most harmonious pairing of snares, but I liked it for this context. Speaking of the sonic aesthetics of this, why don't I go ahead and bypass all of the post-processing I did and let you just hear the kit raw? Okay, you get the idea. And now I'll just add in my stuff. So you can hear there's a pretty stark contrast between the totally dry signal and all of the effects enabled that I put on there. But that's not necessarily a pejorative thing to say about the drum library itself, because in my estimation you want something that's dry and malleable enough so that you can color it in the way that's most suitable for whatever context you're in. And sometimes you want something relatively dry, and sometimes you want big, enormous, massive drums. But anyway, so you have to start with something not super colorful to begin with. They just do a really good job of providing such well-mic'd, well-performed on pieces of the kit for you to just play with as you deem fit. Okay, so I've talked way too much about drums. Let's just move on to bass now. Oh, so I will say that some of the bass processing that I did, I utilized a plugin which is not out yet that I can't show you, and I'm very glad and proud of myself for realizing that before I showcased it here and then tediously had to edit it all out so as to not get sued. We don't like getting sued over here in this household. Alright, that was literally just the DI of Jin Bass 2. This is obviously a ding wall, which is what the bass player from Archspire uses, so I found that this one would be the most fitting bass to use of all the submission products that are available. It did it justice. It's super well sampled, as all of their products are, and there's a lot of flexibility as far as the articulation commands go. Speaking of which, let's just dive into that. As you can see, again, this is just the DI. You can see some stuff down here that doesn't look like it's additional notes being played, and that's because it's not. It's actually the articulation commands. They're, I believe, hammers and taps. Yeah. So this, if you put a note there on your piano roll, that will trigger an instance of a tap, and then here, whoopsies, is an instance, no, shoot, it's the opposite. Sorry, this one's a hammer, that one's a tap, okay? Not that it really matters, you get the idea. You can do hammers and taps, and you just look at the settings, and it'll tell you what note does what on your piano roll. If I weren't so lazy, I'd just show you, but okay, I'll show you. Okay, look, here, the settings thingy icon thing. Yep, you have your key switch map, and then it shows you what does what. So see how this says slap E-2? If you want to slap, you put a note on E-2. I'm so helpful. Okay, enough of that. Let's start from the beginning so you can hear this. Okay, every one of those three are doing something slightly different. One supplies a little bit more of that fluffy low end, still tamed, though not too fluffed. And one provides a bit more clarity, especially when you get into that hammer-on tappy section of the arpeggios. Some of that clarity gets lost on that one dirty channel. The third one, it really just serves as glue, like a more high gain channel for the bass, where it allows it to glue to the guitars a little bit more because it resembles a guitar tone. So that is the summation of all of this stuff here that you hear. So speaking of that tappy section that I was telling you about earlier, here it is with just more of that fluffy low end bass. Some of that note clarity gets lost a little bit, so when you add this one in, yeah, it's a bit more clear. And here we have our bass, which sort of glues it to the rhythm guitars, like I said. So let's play that with the rhythm guitars here. My God, there's just so much going on there. Dude, I don't know, like, you're a bass player and you have all of the excuse in the world to chill and have the easiest job ever, and you choose that. I'm not complaining as a listener. I think it's really impressive, and it's a sort of commendation in a sense, even though it sounds like an insult. I swear it's not. It's just so much. But you do have to treat the bass a little bit differently in terms of mixing, especially whenever it's so active, which is true for all of the components when you think about it. You have to really carve out space for everything. So hopefully I did an okay job of that here, of sort of finding the place for everything. I think I did an okay job. Let's move on to rhythm guitars. Here we have our rhythm guitars, and here's where we can get into all the fun stuff. Okay, so here's my rhythm guitar bus channel. Let's take a look at what's going on in there. I have some compression, some pre-EQing there that I'm just doing to the DI. And then I'm using the Mixwave Spirit Box Mic Stringer plugin, which I made a video about in the past, for the amp portion, and I believe I'm utilizing the overdrive. Yeah. So drive into the amp, and that is going into the GGD Contenders Round 1 IRs, my presets. Let's talk a little bit about that. As you can see on these rhythm guitars, I have the preset, I believe it's the preset Drink Your Water. I think that's the one it is. Yes. It is. I just had the output a little bit higher, so we'll readjust that. As far as the name for this plugin goes, to give you some insight that you didn't ask for, I happened to realize that I was extremely dehydrated at the time of making these presets, as I typically am. I'm chronically dehydrated, if I'm being honest, and it's very irresponsible of me. It's very non-adult. And I think it's true that most people are dehydrated. I also get very annoyed when people tell me to drink more water because I'm an adult, even though I don't behave as such. I just named it Drink Your Water. It has no reference to what it sounds like whatsoever. But that's what it sounds like. So, just to give you a little bit of insight into how the IRs work here and how this whole setup goes, you actually have the capability of blending a bunch of cabs together. For example, for this preset, I took this Angle XXL cab. I actually took 2 instances of that, and I mic'd one up with the SM57, so we have a dynamic mic, and then the Royer R121, the most classic mic pairing of all time. So we have a blend of those 2 mics on that same cab. There's also a dark and a bright knob over here, which you can see. That allows you to, of course, adjust the brightness or the darkness of the cab. Okay, I'm not being helpful. Let me just show you what it sounds like. Oh, so I've soloed this one channel, so all you're hearing right now is the Angle XXL, SM57. I've soloed that. Here it is. Pretty big range, and you'll notice that even when you turn that knob all the way to bright, it's not offensive. It sounds great no matter what direction and to what degree you turn that knob. I think they did a really, really great job of, I guess you could say, dummy proofing, which is great for me, and I appreciate them a lot for that. So you can hear that I have this one set to plus 1.4 on the bright side, so there's more brightness being supplied by this one right here, this channel, and I've blended that with this one here. Yeah, I liked it at minus 3.2 for some reason. And then here they are together. And there you have it. That's the blend of those two. And now let's throw this Marshall AV cab in the mix here. It's mic'd with an SM7B. And as you can see, it's blended way down in the mix. So not all of these are at equal gain value. Yeah, so again, you can see that I have that one just a little bit over to the dark side because most of the brightness is being supplied by this first one here. I like my guitars, typically I like them to lean a little bit bright. That's just my preference. And especially in this mix, it's essential that they do lean a little bit bright. Okay, so here's what it sounds like once again, all of it together. And the other rhythm tone that I have here, trundle tone, which is a reference to my music video called Trundle, and it is my crowning achievement. So if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend you go check it out. So let's take a look at what these rhythm guitars sound like through the lens of trundle tone instead of Drink Your Water. Very different. So you can hear that you can get such a wide range of tones with these cabs. And that's the exact same input, same exact processing in the signal chain, except I'm just changing the cab. With all of these various cab options that you have here, and let me just show you some just for the sake. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8 cabs, all of which emulating something very different from one another. Hopefully I'm not getting people in trouble, but you know, it's obviously emulating Marshall's EVH's orange angle. I mean, you can't get in trouble, right? You can't get sued. I'm worried about getting sued today for some reason. Anyway, you get the point. There's a bunch of cabs here to choose from, a lot of classics, a lot of really amazing cabs, and now you can blend them at your will. Also select the various mics. You have 2, 4, 6, 7 mics to choose from. And again, all of which phenomenal classic mics. And they did a really great job of capturing the essence of each of these. I'm gonna force myself to move on now. Those are the rhythm guitars. Okay, the part I've been dreading, the leads. I'm only dreading it because I tracked them so poorly, but I learned it in a week and I'm proud of that. And I still have room to grow, clearly, when it comes to playing at this speed. Anyway, again, talking too much, let's shut the f up and play it. I'm using the Polychrome McRocklin. This is too big. This is too big. We're gonna make that smaller. Okay, it's still kind of big, but whatever. You can see that I have modified my own preset. It's not available, I just did it for myself, but whatever. Here are the settings if you so choose to copy them. I'm a fan of warmer leads now, like less shrill high end and just a very smooth MIDI lead. As you can see, I have the mid knob absolutely cranked here, but that's really just the nature of this plugin in particular. I think the McRocklin suite, it really favors treble and presence, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the scooped lead that's biting and cuts through. I think that's great in a lot of cases, and I still am a fan of cutting leads, maybe I should say. But I've been experimenting with some more smooth MIDI-ish leads. So I have the heat presser activated here. That's just giving a little bit of compression. I have the warmth all the way up. Bass is rolled back to 5.9. Mids are cranked, like I said. The treble is at 6.1. Presence is at 0.8. I do have the reverb and delay engaged here. I do really like the reverb here, the stream reverb. It's not super high in the mix because, again, leads are fast and we don't want to go crazy, okay? We can't go crazy. Delay and verb are down a bit in the mix, and then some compression. I have the speakers disabled. This is something you can do in most plugins, this one included. So you see this button here that enables the speakers, and now I have them disabled so that I can use, you guessed it, the GGD IRs. Okay, so this one, I believe, I don't know why I have all those soloed, that's pointless, but I believe I'm using the aggro lead here. Oh, that's right. No, this one is God Dog lead. Again, reference to Trundle. You must watch the video. You must watch it if you don't know what I'm talking about. You gotta watch it. Okay, so anyway, God Dog lead preset. Okay, so you can see the blend there. It's an EVH, an Angle XXL, and an orange cab. And the EVH has this KM140 mic, SM57 on the Angle cab, and an R121 on the orange cab. And you can see here that they're all at different levels, blended to taste, of course. And I have once again played around with the darkness and the brightness of these various cabs, and just found a balance that I liked. So I soloed them already, but you can once again hear that the brightness is being supplied mostly by this 3VH here. Honestly, that sounds really good just on its own. You can use these on their own. Like, you don't need to blend a ton of things. You can and get a really unique sound. That sounds great. Anyway, that's what that sounds like. Darkness, the attack is just so clear in this. Aside from the shitty playing, that sounds amazing. I really like this tone. I like this tone. That's really what it comes down to. There's one more little lead section, which is played even worse. God help me. God dog help me. That's not funny. Okay, so because this is played more in a low register than the other lead section, I had to treat this differently EQ-wise. So I'm also using the McRocklin suite here, and it's tweaked a little bit differently. So everything is somewhat in the same place, except those mids are rolled back a little bit. I didn't want it to have as much body. I wanted it to be a little bit more brittle in a sense, a little bit thinner, so that way it didn't step on the toes of the rhythm guitars, because it is in somewhat of a similar register as those. So yeah, here's what they sound like together, the rhythms and this lead. So you can hear that they separate themselves naturally from one another, or your ears allow them to be perceived as separate entities because they're treated differently EQ-wise and all of that stuff. But speaking of that, here is the other preset, which I thought for a second I was using, but obviously this is the aggro lead. This is definitely more bitey, a little bit more intense than God Dog lead. I strategically used it on these because, once again, I really wanted to separate these leads in the lower register from the rhythm guitars, so that's why I chose aggro lead for this one. Whereas if I went with there's just more presence and high end from this one. Got this Uber cab, the Angle XXL, and the EVH here. So, pretty self-explanatory. I just found that combination of cabinetry. I thought it sounded good. So here they are soloed. get some best of all worlds from each of them, I think. Anyway, all of these presets are pretty divergent from one another. It gives you a variety of tones, and you can really do a lot. There's a lot of flexibility within this plugin in and of itself to craft your tone, which it's just so great. You can do all this stuff and pretty much arrive at anything that you want for not that much money when you think about it, considering what it used to cost to do all of this stuff. But anyway, I digress. I sound like a boomer now. I hope you guys found all of this useful, informative, or at least entertaining. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, I'm looking forward to your feedback. And once again, go check out Trundle and check out the GGD IRs if you so choose. And maybe, I don't know, any of the things that I mentioned here. I mentioned quite a few, but they're all very useful in their own right, and I find myself using all of them pretty much every day of my life because I have no life. Let me know if you have any of these, if you found these tips useful, what your favorite of these plugins are. I will see you guys in the next one.